Welcome to this video, Bible Prophecy Fulfillment and Mathematical Probabilities. Scientific proof that God exists and that He has sent manifestations of Himself to guide humanity, including the latest new Messiah of the Second Advent. If there is a God, and God is the creator of the universe, then He also created the physical processes involved in that creation and/or resulting from the creation. The various sciences, including mathematics, were invented by humans to study the world around us to decipher the mysteries of God's creation. In this presentation, the mathematical laws of probability will be used to discover the mysteries of God's prophecies foretelling the coming of the Messiah in both the first and second Advents. And yes, the Messiah of the Second Advent has already appeared and for 40 years taught His teachings, guiding humankind for this new era, the new era prophesied by Jesus. His new faith has over 6 million followers all over the globe. His forerunner, the Elijah figured prophesied in the Bible, made his proclamation in 1844. The Messiah made his announcement in 1863, and he returned to the spiritual realm in 1892. So if God is all-powerful and all-knowing, and He has sent manifestations or prophets, that's with a capital P, of Himself to us, such as Moses and Jesus, and some minor prophets, such as Isaiah, Jeremiah, Daniel, and some others of the Old Testament, and of course John of Patmos, whose visions brought us the book of Revelation, well, if God gave them some visions of the future, then we should be able to apply science, meaning the mathematical laws of probability, to prove whether or not these prophecies have been fulfilled in ways that are then other than by mere chance alone. In other words, God provided the means to fulfill the prophecies that otherwise would be very unlikely, in fact downright improbable, to be fulfilled by mere chance. That's all the prophecies. In effect, proving the validity of the prophecies in the Bible and the objects of these prophecies, meaning the Messiah in both the first and second Advents, and thus that God Himself really exists in and is directing world events. Odds are that you are not a math fan. Odds are that you never thought to apply mathematical probability theory to the likelihood that Jesus fulfilled biblical prophecies. Just how probable was it that He and John the Baptist were who we now think they were? And definitely odds are that you are not aware of the return of the Messiah and the probabilities that the persons who appeared fulfilled biblical prophecies of the coming of the Messiah of the latter days. The purpose of this presentation is to, number one, inform you of the appearance of the Messiah of the Second Advent. And then, of course, to use mathematics to prove that Jesus the Christ was the Messiah, the Christ of the First Advent. Then, to prove that the probabilities that the Bible prophecies about the appearance of the Messiah of the latter days, the Second Advent, are so high that these persons, the forerunner and the Messiah, being other than the fulfillment of these prophecies, is extremely improbable. In other words, odds are that they truly are the prophesied promised ones. Their fulfillment of Bible prophecies is way beyond the likelihood that their appearances could have happened by mere chance. There are several laws of probability involved in the calculation of mathematical probabilities. The law of probability that we will mostly be using here is this one. Quote, "The probability of the simultaneous or successive occurrences of two or more independent events is equal to the product of their separate probabilities." End quote. This is a quote from a book titled Basic Statistical Methods by R.W. Heath, as quoted by Dr. Hushadar Matla in his book, Lord of Lords, on page 527. Now don't let this scare you. We're going to be talking in very simple terms about what probability is, and you will understand. Just don't get scared at this point. But before we get to that, here are some examples of some calculated probabilities. The U.S. National Weather Service estimates the probability of you being struck by lightning in a year between 2001 and 2010 in the USA was 1 chance in 1 million, or written in scientific notation, meaning reducing the number 1,000,000, that's 1 with 6 zeros, to a 1 or 2 digit number, then the exponent of the base 10 needed to equal that number, 1,000,000. Scientific notation is often used simply because some of the numbers can get quite large. So writing 1 in a million becomes 1 in 10 to the 5th power. The probability of winning the lottery for a 6-number selection, numbers from 1 to 54 with no repeated numbers, is 1 chance in 25,827,165. We are going to round the 25 plus million to 26 million, then put it in scientific notation. Then we get, in scientific notation, 1 in 2.6 times 10 to the 7th power as the odds of your winning the lottery. That means you don't have much of a chance to either get struck by lightning or to win the lottery. Now, I got this from a website where anyone can calculate the mathematical probability of winning the lottery. You can go to that website there you see on the slide. These probabilities for getting struck by lightning or winning the lottery are repeated at the top of the slide. Comparing them, you can see that you have a much better chance of getting hit by lightning than winning the lottery, and both are extremely unlikely. We're going to run through some simple probability calculations to help understand the math of probability. You need to know this for our discussion. Be patient, you will understand. It's just a few slides. Now, assuming we have a coin that is wonderfully balanced so that it cannot land on its side, you can only get heads or tails, the odds or probability, that's the capital P on the slide, of getting heads when you flip a coin is equal to the results you want, the one side you want, that's heads, which equals the 1 on the right there, over the denominator of the number of sides of the coin, 2 sides to the coin. So you get 1 over 2. So the probability is 1 in 2, shown in the bottom right. Probability can be expressed in a couple different ways. Here the probability is 1 in 2, or 1 over 2, or 0.5, or 0.50, or 50% chance of getting heads, or 1 chance out of 2, or 1 chance in 2. Now that we have that simple concept, let's move on to the probabilities from tossing a die, a 6-sided cube with each side having a different number of dots from 1 to 6. We decide we want to determine the probability of tossing a die and getting the 4-spot side up to be face up. We toss the die, we want a 4-spot side result, so the probability is P equals 1 over 6. One side, the one we want, a 4-spot, from a total of 6 sides, so probability is 1 out of 6, or 1 in 6. Next, we toss the same die a second time, wanting the 4-spot result. The probability is still 1 in 6 because a second toss is an independent occurrence. It is not affected by the previous tosses. Now in this example, we're going to toss 2 dice. Now, they're identical dice, and we want to have 4 spots show up. So what is the probability by chance alone that we will get both of them be a 4-spot? And this probability is calculated by multiplying the probability for one dice that we showed before, and then we multiply it by the probability of the other dice showing a 4, which is identical. Both of those are 1 over 6, or 1 out of 6. And to calculate the combined probability, we multiply these. The numerator, 1 times 1 equals 1. Then the denominator, 6 times 6 equals 36. So the end result probability of getting 2 4s when we toss 2 dice is 1 in 36. So what if we toss 10 dice at the same time, wanting the 4 spots to show up on all 10? What is the probability that all 10 will be a 4-spot side up? Again, we multiply the probabilities for each of those independent individual die 1 out of 6. So we follow multiplication rules for fractions and multiply the 10 ones at the top, the numerators. 10 ones equals 1, which is the top number, the pink one near the bottom right corner. Then we multiply the 10 sixes, the denominators. 6 times 6 times 6, etc., which equals the very large number of 60,466,176. So the probability of getting all 4 spots on all 10 dice if we throw them together is 1 in 60,466,176, or to shorten it, in scientific notation, it is 1 in 6.0 times 10 to the 7th power. So the probability of getting all 4 spots on all 10 dice in one toss being 1 in 60,466,176, or 1 in 6.0 times 10 to the 7th power. You would have to throw the dice 24 hours a day at a rate of once every second. That's 86,400 times a day for up to 2 years before we would likely see all 10 dice showing the 4 spot sides. This was calculated, by the way, by Dr. Hushadar Matla in his book Lord of Lords, which I will introduce to you next. Most of the probability mathematics information and calculations are from these sources: Khan Academy's courses on math regarding probability theories, just some of the basics that you have already seen in this presentation. Khan Academy is a free online university, by the way. You might be interested in looking at it. The section coming up next in this presentation regarding the calculations of the probabilities that Jesus the Christ was indeed the prophesied Messiah of the First Advent comes from the book Science Speaks by Peter Stoner and Robert Newman. This book is now online at www.sciencespeaks.net. This book was published first in 1976 and has become widely accepted, praised, and touted as the undeniable truth by Christians throughout the world that Jesus was indeed the Christ. And last but definitely not least, the book Lord of Lords by Dr. Hushadar Matla. Dr. Matla studied the book Science Speaks by Stoner and Newman and applied the very same mathematics of probability to calculating the probability by chance alone that persons could come and fulfill the prophecies of the Messiah of the Second Advent, and to compare it to how these prophecies have already been fulfilled by the persons who are the prophet founders of the Baha'i faith. Dr. Matla used the same laws of probability that Stoner and Newman used, and he proves to my mind, and I think you'll find to yours too, if you're honest, that they could not have fulfilled these Bible prophecies by mere chance alone. And Dr. Matla's proofs on the fulfillment of these Bible prophecies meet the same standards as those that Stoner and Newman used. And you can see more information about these sources at the end of the presentation as well. And I used Dr. Matla's basic calculations as kind of a framework of this presentation. This next section of this presentation will review the math of the probability that Jesus fulfilled Bible prophecy and thus is truly the predicted Messiah, the Christ, as presented by Peter Stoner and Robert Newman in their book just mentioned before. Their math shows that the fulfillment of numerous Bible prophecies by the appearance of one person, Jesus, is well outside the bounds of mere chance alone. Consider that Jesus, the probability of Jesus fulfilling the prophecies of the Messiah, the First Advent, being outside the likelihood of that happening by chance alone, means that there must have been some kind of interventional power causing it, because it's outside of chance. And that, to me, means Probably God, since God was the reputed source of the prophecies. Just something to think about. And just to give you an overview of how we're going to do this section on the probabilities of Jesus fulfilling those 8 prophecies by chance alone, well, first we're going to review the 8 Bible prophecies that Stoner and Newman selected and calculated the probabilities that someone could fulfill these Bible prophecies by chance. And we'll review each of those, have the probability calculation for each, and then we'll sum it all up at the end and total up these probability factors and come up with the probability of all 8 of them being fulfilled by chance. The first prophecy they did is this, quote, "But thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall he come forth unto me, that is to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth have been from of old, from everlasting." End quote. That's from Micah chapter 5, verse 2. Stoner and Newman assigned a probability of 1 in 280,000, or 1 in 2.8 times 10 to the 5th power. Their rationale was from the likely population of Bethlehem and the world at the time. The second prophecy of the Messiah of the first advent, quote, "Behold, I will send my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me." That's from Malachi chapter 3, verse 1. According to Stoner and Newman, in their assessment of the probability of this prophecy being fulfilled by chance, quote, "One man in how many, the world over, has had a forerunner to prepare the way." End quote. The probability is 1 in 10 to the 3rd power, or 1 in 1,000. That means they thought that 1 in 1,000 men may have a messenger sent ahead to prepare the way for them. This is actually a very conservative number. A choice of 1 in a million is much less likely a chance, would be justifiable to me. I mean, how many people have a forerunner announcing they're coming? But they chose to go with the more conservative estimate of 1 in 1,000, as you see here. The third prophecy of the Messiah of the first advent, quote, "Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, thy king cometh unto thee. He is just and having salvation, lowly and riding upon a colt, the foal of an ass." End quote. That's from Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9. The setup rationale by Stoner and Newman is, quote, "One man in how many, who was born in Bethlehem and had a forerunner, did enter Jerusalem as a king riding on a colt, the foal of an ass." End quote. They assign a probability of 1 in 100 that it would be fulfilled by chance, a probability given the common use of donkeys at the time in that part of the world. And the fourth prophecy, quote, "And one shall say unto him, What are these wounds in thine hands? Then he shall answer, Those with which I was wounded in the house of my friends." That's from Zechariah chapter 13, verse 6. Per Stoner and Newman, 1 man in how many, the world over, has been betrayed by a friend, and that betrayal has resulted in his being wounded in his hands. And they give a probability of 1 in 1,000, or 1 in 10 to the 3rd power. And the fifth prophecy, quote, "And I said unto them, If ye think good, give me my price, and if not, forbear. So they weighed for my price 30 pieces of silver." End quotes. That's from Zechariah chapter 11, verse 12. They very conservatively ascribe a chance of 1 in 1,000 that, as they put it, of the people who have been betrayed, 1 in how many have been betrayed for exactly 30 pieces of silver, and their probability assessment was 1 in 1,000. And the sixth of the 8 prophecies of the first advent, quote, "And the Lord said unto me, Cast it unto the potter, a goodly price that I was prized at of them. And I took the 30 pieces of silver and cast them to the potter in the house of the Lord." End quote. That's from Zechariah chapter 11, verse 13. The probability, 1 in 10 to the fifth power. That's 1 in 10,000. And this explanation from Stoner and Newman, one man in how many, after receiving a bribe for the betrayal of a friend, had returned the money, has it refused, had thrown it on the floor in the house of the Lord, and then had it used to purchase a field from the potter. Again, their probability 1 in 10,000. In the seventh prophecy, quote, "He was oppressed, and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He is brought as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before her shears is dumb, so he openeth not his mouth." End quote. That's from Isaiah chapter 53, verse 7. Stoner and Newman said, one man and how many, after fulfilling the above prophecies, when he is oppressed and afflicted and is on trial for his life, though innocent, will make no defense for himself. Their probability is 1 in 1,000. Again, a rather conservative figure. And the last of the 8 prophecies, quote, "For dogs have compassed me, the assembly of the wicked have enclosed me, they pierced my hands and my feet." End quote. That's from Psalms chapter 22, verse 16. And the basis used by Stoner and Newman in assigning a probability, one man in how many, from the time of David on, has been crucified. And their probability that they assign to that is 1 in 10,000. This is a listing of all those prophecies and the probabilities for each of them being fulfilled by chance. And then to get the probability for all of them being fulfilled by chance all at one time, we have to multiply them. So we multiply 2.8 times 10 to the fifth power for first prophecy times 1 in 10 to the third power, and times 10 to the second power, times for the fourth prophecy 10 to the third power, etc. And you add the exponents when you multiply, by the way. And the end result is, for fulfillment of all 8 of those prophecies, the probability is 1 in 2.8 times 10 to the 28th power. That's 28 with 27 zeros after it, or 2.8 with 28 zeros after it. That's a pretty high odds there. The calculation of the probability of these prophecies being fulfilled by chance has to factor in the population of the planet from biblical times up to the present, because that's who would have to be selected to have fulfilled it other than Jesus. The grand total was estimated to be 88 billion people. That's from biblical times up to the present, which for calculation purposes was rounded up to 100 billion, just to be on the safe side. And 100 billion is 10 to the 11th power. So next, we divide the probability ratio we determined for the likelihood of the 8 prophecies being fulfilled by chance by the population of the planet from biblical times to the present. To do this, we simply subtract the 10 to the 11th power exponent from the 10 to the 28th power exponent to arrive at the answer of the adjusted probability of 1 in 2.8 times 10 to the 17th power. Still an extremely unbelievable, unlikely occurrence that all 8 of these prophecies could have been fulfilled by chance alone. So what does this mean? Remember, back before we talked about the probability of being hit by lightning or winning the lottery are 1 in 10 to the 5th or 1 in 2.6 times 10 to the 7th, respectively, making them extremely unlikely of coming true for you or for me. So a probability of a person or events around a person fulfilling all 8 of these Bible prophecies due to chance alone at 1 in 2.8 times 10 to the 17th power is incredibly unlikely by chance alone. Therefore, what it means is Jesus was undoubtedly the prophesied Messiah of the first advent as foretold in the Bible. It also proves the veracity of those prophecies and proves that some power beyond this world must have set those prophecies and then caused the events that fulfilled them, meaning God, since that is what the Bible says is the source. So, if the laws of probability mathematics are applicable and true for use to prove the claim that Jesus was the Christ of the first advent, then they must also be applicable and true to proving the claim of Baha'u'llah, the Bab, and the Baha'i Faith, being the Messiah of the second advent, his forerunner, and their revealed faith community, respectively. So, what's next? Well, since I'm saying that the Messiah of the second advent has returned, I need to tell you something about him. So I'll give a short explanation of who the forerunner of the Messiah was, the Elijah figure, and then the Messiah too. And then I'll do a little brief introduction to their faith community. But first, a very brief history of the Bab, Baha'u'llah, and the Baha'i Faith will be given. But more details will be provided as the Bible prophecies are reviewed. In 1844, there was a young man in Persia who proclaimed that he was the promised one of all the world's major faiths. His message was that he was also the forerunner of another manifestation of God, who he referred to as him whom God shall make manifest. The king, the prime minister, and clergy of Persia became fearful of the many thousands of followers of the Bab. They feared the end of their own power and prestige if he was not stopped. On July 9, 1850, the king ordered the killing of the Bab by firing squad. They stopped the Bab, but not his disciples, and not the one who was him whom God shall make manifest, that the Bab said would come soon. In 1863, a man named Baha'u'llah, which means the glory of God in English, proclaimed that he was the promised Messiah, the one the Bab had foretold, who is the Lord of hosts to the Jews, the returned Christ in the station of the Father to the Christians, the fifth Buddha to Buddhists, the 10th Avatar expected by the Hindus, and the promised one to all the major faiths of God. The Bab was the forerunner of the Messiah of the second advent, who was Baha'u'llah. The Bab is the divine title of this forerunner, the Elijah figure of the second advent. The Bab means in English the gate or door of God. Baha'u'llah is the divine title of this second person, and Baha'u'llah means the glory of God when translated into English. To further explain the concept of divine title, the divine title of Jesus was the Christ, which derives from the Greek word for the anointed one. The word Messiah is from the Hebrew term for the anointed one, so the word Christ means the same thing as Messiah, the anointed one. There are many names for the Bab, most that you see here are from the Bible, and a few from Baha'i writings, such as the gate or door of God, the forerunner, the Elijah figure, Lord, the Lamb of Revelation, the Lamp of Revelation, the King of Kings, the Most High or the Most Exalted, the Primal Point, and some others. Baha'u'llah's name is found throughout the Old Testament and in the New Testament's book of Revelation, that name being the glory of God or the glory of the Lord. His other titles in the Bible include the Lord of Hosts, the Anointed One or Messiah, Lord, the Ancient Beauty, Ancient of Days, Jehovah, the one who sits on the throne, that's of the book of Revelation, and some more on the next slide. To continue, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the Father, David, Michael, which means who is like God, the Everlasting Father, and God in some verses, among some other names. And the name of the new faith is the Baha'i Faith. Baha means glory in English. Baha'i means followers of the glory. Since its inception in 1844, that's about 171 years ago, there are now about 6 million Baha'is spread all over the globe, with about 160,000 here in the United States. The 26 prophecies that we're going to be reviewing here do not contain any of the time prophecies, and there are some that have also been fulfilled. The year of return for the Messiah is 1844 per Bible prophecies. This video does not explain the evidence, but remember this date as we go through the remainder of this video, 1844 AD, or CE, Common Era. I just wanted to mention at this point in the video that I have done many other videos on Bible prophecy fulfillment by the Bab and Baha'u'llah. It's not just the 26 prophecies that are covered in this particular video that they have fulfilled. They've fulfilled about 1,800 in total, but these are the names of the other videos I've done. Christ Has Returned, that's about Bible time prophecies of the return of Messiah and how they've fulfilled them. Revelation Revealed, about how the book of Revelation has been fulfilled. Armageddon is over, because it really has. It's in the past, mostly. We still have some effects of it going on, however. The hail that's bombarding us. And every eye will see him, since people think that the Messiah, when he returns, will literally come down on a cloud. This explains why the literal version of that is just not feasible, and that spiritually interpreted versions of that prophecy are much more valid spiritually. And 3 more of my videos. The one at the top, The Prophecy of the Seventh Millennium, tells of how Jewish texts and scholarly traditions foretell that the Messiah, who is expected to come for the 7th millennium, was actually slated to come 400 years before the 7th millennium actually starts. And that I'll explain all that to you in there. Then there's the prophecies of Jesus. That's the prophecies in Matthew chapter 24. And the bottom, questions answered, about some questions viewers of my videos have raised over the years, such as, is Baha'u'llah the Antichrist? The short answer to that is no, but it's explained in there exactly what's what with that. And Jesus is the only way? Well, yes and no, and that video explains that answer. And here is how to find these videos in YouTube. You go to the YouTube website, of course, you enter my name in the search box, Integral Destiny 9. That's Integral Destiny 9, one word. Don't forget the 9 at the end. Put that into the search box, and a list of videos will appear, and just choose the one or ones you would like to see. Another little clarification. How did Dr. Matla calculate the probabilities? Well, he used the same techniques as did Stoner and Newman to determine the probabilities that chance alone would fulfill each of the 8 prophecies about the Messiah of the First Advent. And this is from a quote from Dr. Matla's book on his approach to applying probability laws. In his own words, quote, "The probability ratios adopted for these prophecies are based on the combined judgment of a group of mostly college students involved in the study of prophecies. The participants were asked to be both reasonable and conservative." Many of you that got this far are getting antsy, wanting to get on with it. So for you short attention span folks, I'll abbreviate the details for you. So I will provide a summary of the probability rankings for these 26 prophecies for the coming of the Messiah of the Second Advent, the Messiah of the 7th millennium. Just the probabilities with a brief description of each of the 26 prophecies, the Bible verses from which they originate, and their probability estimates. I'll provide the summary of these probabilities and compare them to a bit to those we did for Jesus to show how incredibly more unlikely that all 26 would be fulfilled by the Bab, Baha'u'llah, and 2 other main figures of the Baha'i faith, proof that they are undoubtedly the foretold entities. Then, if you wish to see the details of each of these 26 prophecies and exactly how they were fulfilled by the Bab and Baha'u'llah, Abdu'l-Baha, and Shoghi Effendi of the Baha'i faith, you can continue watching this video, that is part 2 of the video, for these details. This is an example of how each of the prophecies we will review will be presented. Note that each prophecy of the 26 prophecies of the Old and New Testaments is numbered in the left column. Here we have the prophecy I have numbered number 4. A summary of each prophecy will be given, and it will cite at least one Bible verse from which this prophecy originates. In the right column, the probability calculation is given for fulfillment of this specific prophecy. And just to make sure you completely understand, after this initial introduction of the 26 prophecies and the mathematical probability review is done, then in a separate video called Part 2, the details will be given on how each of these 26 prophecies were fulfilled by the Bab, Baha'u'llah, and or other main figures of the Baha'i faith. Also be clear on this point. I only review 26 of the Old and New Testament prophecies that have been fulfilled by the appearances of the Bab and Baha'u'llah, but they actually have fulfilled all the Bible prophecies of the coming of the Messiah of the latter days, also known as the Messiah of the Second Advent to Christians. That's over 1,800 prophecies, and I have done other videos that demonstrate many of them, how they fulfilled many of them, and I'll have that at the end of the program here. Now it will be proven mathematically that the Messiah of the Second Coming has appeared in the persons of Baha'u'llah, his forerunner the Bab, and his faith, the Baha'i faith. The first prophecy we will mention here is from Matthew chapter 24 verse 30. Quote, and there's two parts to this actually: the stars will fall from heaven, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man, the Messiah, in the heaven. And here we have a probability ranking of 1 in 100. Prophecy number 2 is also from Matthew chapter 24 verse 30. Quote, immediately after the tribulation of these days the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. End quote. And there are several other verses similar to this in the books of Luke and Mark. Now the Bab and Baha'u'llah fulfilled this. Remember exactly how they did in their times will be in part 2, the video that is part 2 to this. Now the probability of this occurring by chance alone, the fulfillment of this prophecy, is estimated to be 1 in 10. Prophecy number 3 is from the book of Jeremiah, chapter 49, verse 38. And this, from other verses close to this, they're talking about the latter days. Quote, and I will set my throne in Elam in the latter days, and will destroy from thence king and princes, saith the Lord. End quote. Now this is a quickie to tell you how that this was fulfilled. The forerunner, the Elijah figure, who is the Bab, proclaimed his appearance in Elam, which is in present-day Shiraz, Iran. That's southwest Iran, is the ancient Elam. And he made that proclamation in 1844, Common Era. Now the probability that this was by chance alone is ranked as 1 in 3,000. Prophecy number 4, the Messiah comes to northwest Israel from outside of Israel, from the east, not from Israel itself. And that's from the 3 verses you see there, 2 from Isaiah, 1 from Jeremiah. And the probability rating is 1 in 10,000 that this could happen by chance. Prophecy number 5, that a man called the glory of God will come to live in the strong or fortified city. This is from Psalms 60 verse 9 and Psalms 108 verse 10. Quote, who will bring me to or into the strong city? A little explanation here. God agrees to deliver those who fear God to or into the strong city, which is the place of the sanctuary of God, meaning the sanctuary of the Messiah. Probability that this would be fulfilled by chance alone is 1 in 1,000. Prophecy number 6, the climate of Israel Palestine, improves after the person arrives in the area. This is from Isaiah 35 verses 1 and 2, and it's given the probability rating of 1 in 100 that this would occur by chance alone. Prophecy number 7, the glory of God, would come to the Holy Land from the east of the Holy Land, not from Israel itself. And the probability that this would occur, someone calling himself the glory of God would go to the Holy Land from the east, would be 1 in 4. Prophecy number 8, the person who calls himself the Redeemer of the world or the Lord of the vineyard goes to Mount Carmel. Carmel means the vineyard of the Lord, by the way. It's located in northwest Israel. And that's from the 2 verses you see there, and the probability that this would occur by chance alone is given as 1 in 2. Prophecy number 9, that the man who comes to the Holy Land under the control of thousands of his enemies thereafter permanently lives in that blessed land. He establishes the center of his spiritual kingdom on the slopes of Mount Carmel. That's from the verses you see listed there, and the probability by chance alone that a person would achieve that would be 1 in 1,000. Prophecy number 10, that the man who is exiled to the Holy Land succeeds in attracting followers from all nations of earth. That's over 200 countries and territories, who come to visit his resting place. And that prophecy is from several of those verses you see listed there, and the probability of fulfilling that by chance alone is 1 in 10,000. Prophecy number 11, that the coming of the man exiled to the Holy Land coincides with the return of the Jews to that blessed land. And that prophecy is given in the chapters and verses that you see listed there, and the probability that this would occur by chance alone is given as 1 in 20. Prophecy number 12, that the man who comes to the Holy Land calls himself a king and brings a prescription for the establishment of unity and a federation of nations. This is prophesied in those chapters and verses you see listed there, 1 from Isaiah and 2 from Daniel. And the probability that this would occur by chance alone is given as 1 in 50. The 13th prophecy is that the man who comes to the Holy Land introduces counsels for the establishment of a world peace plan. And that is foretold in the books and chapters and verses you see listed there. And the probability by chance alone that this would occur is given as 1 in 10. The 14th prophecy, that the man who calls himself the Redeemer of the world is the same in all languages, and he calls for the nations of the earth to select one language to be its worldwide auxiliary language for all to speak in addition to their native tongue. And that's from Zephaniah chapters 3 and 14, and the probability is 1 in 10. The total probability for the prophecies so far, that's what prophecies 1 through 14, is 1 in 2.4 times 10 to the 28th power. Now of course you get that from multiplying all the probabilities that we have so far, but we will continue on. Prophecy number 15, that someone who claims to be the Redeemer of the world has a herald, a forerunner, who comes to prepare the way before him. And that's from the books, chapters, and verses you see listed, and the probability is 1 in 500 that this would occur by chance alone. The 16th prophecy that has been fulfilled by the Bob, actually, that the title of the herald of the Messiah is the gate, or the gate of the Lord. And that's from the books and chapters that you see listed, and the probability that this would occur is given as 1 in 50. And the 17th prophecy that was fulfilled, again this time by the Bob, is that the herald who brings good news, the new revelation, is exiled to live on the mountains. That's from Isaiah and Nahum in the chapters and verses you see, and the probability that this would occur by chance alone is given as 1 in 300. The 18th prophecy that was fulfilled is that the man who calls himself a redeemer becomes qualified for the title of the Lamb by giving his life for his beliefs. And that was referring again to the Bab, because he was martyred for his beliefs by the king of Persia in 1850. And that's from the prophecies from Revelation chapter 7 verses 9 and 10, probability of 1 in 300. The 19th prophecy that was fulfilled is that the man who gives his life for his beliefs has also thousands of followers who follow his example. And this did indeed come true. The prophecy is from Revelation chapter 7 verses 9 and 10, probability given as 1 in 50. And the 20th prophecy is that the two redeemers who establish a religion are specifically called the glory of God and the lamp. And that prophecy is from Revelation chapter 21 verses 22 and 23. Probability of this being fulfilled by chance alone is given as 1 in 1,000. Prophecy number 21, that the kings and rulers of the earth conspire against the two redeemers, the Lord and his anointed king. This did indeed occur, by the way. This prophecy is from Psalms chapter 2 verses 1 through 6. Probability given as 1 in 30. Prophecy number 22, that in the religion founded by the man who calls himself the glory of God, there will emerge a third figure named the servant, the branch, or the branch of the Lord. This is from Zechariah chapter 3 verses 8 through 10. Probability of this happening by chance alone is calculated as 1 in 50. Prophecy number 23, that this branch of the Lord, that's from prophecy number 22, will bless the land by planting vines and trees. That's from Isaiah chapter 4 verse 2, probability of 1 in 5. Prophecy 24, that the branch will build the temple of the Lord. That's from Zechariah chapter 6 verse 12, and the probability is 1 in 100. Prophecy 25, that people from faraway places will come to help build the temple of the Lord. That's from Zechariah chapter 6 verses 12 through 15, and probability of 1 in 40. And the last prophecy, the 26th one that we will be using in our calculations, is the prophecy that still a fourth figure, named the zeal of the Lord, arises to build a pattern for a global community. And that's from Isaiah chapter 37 and 2 Kings chapter 19. Probability of 1 in 500. So now we're going to subtotal the probabilities for prophecies 15 through 26 inclusive. So we multiply them and we get the probability of 1 in 1.7 times 10 to the 24th power. Now to total these two subtotals. To do that we multiply the ones, that's of course equals 1. Then we total the 2.4 times 1.7 to get the 4, and add the 10 to the 28th power and the 10 to the 24th power by simply adding the exponents. So we arrive at 28 plus 24 equals 52. So that's where you get the 10 to the 52nd power. So the total probability for all 26 prophecies, that the probability that by chance alone this could have happened, is 1 in 4 times 10 to the 52nd power. Pretty huge. Now, according to Dr. Matla's calculations, the calculation of the probability of these prophecies being fulfilled by chance alone has to factor in the population of the planet from biblical times up to the present. That's because that's the population out of which the entities who would fulfill the prophecies would have to come. So it was estimated that the population of the planet from biblical times to present was about 88 billion people, which they rounded up to 100 billion for the purposes here to be on the safe side. Now, the scientific notation for that number, 100 billion, is 10 to the 11th power. So to factor in this population into our probability that we got for the probability by chance alone that all 26 of these prophecies would be fulfilled by chance, to do that, we divide that probability by the population factor, and we arrive at a then probability that by chance alone these 26 prophecies would be fulfilled as 1 in 4 times 10 to the 41st power. Note that in his book, Lord of Lords, Dr. Matlaw has also determined the probability figure for the fulfillment of the 18 time prophecies in the Bible that the Bab and Baha'u'llah have also fulfilled in the years 1844 and 1863. And note that the Bible indeed did not give the day or hour of the coming of the Messiah of the Second Advent, but it did give the year. In fact, a couple years of special significance, that 1844 for the appearance of the Bab and 1863 for the proclamation of Baha'u'llah that he was the Messiah to all the major faiths on the planet. I'm not going to give the details as to how they fulfilled these 18 time prophecies. You can either purchase Dr. Matlah's books, the one titled I Shall Come Again and the Lord of Lord volumes especially. Information is coming up shortly at the end of the presentation. Or you can go to my other videos by entering my name, Integral Destiny 9, into the YouTube search box and selecting the Christ Has Returned video for some of that information. Dr. Matlah's books are much more jam-packed with information, however. Now, for the probability of fulfillment of these 18 time prophecies, he arrived at the probability of 1 in 10 to the 36th power. And again, factoring in to account for the population of the earth since biblical times, as before, the probability was adjusted by dividing that probability by 10 to the 11th power for that population figure to arrive at a summation of the probability that all these time prophecies could have been fulfilled by chance alone as 1 in 10 to the 25th power. So if we combine the probability for the original 26 prophecies we reviewed and multiply the 18 Bible time prophecy probabilities, we arrive at 1 in 4 times 10 to the 66th power. Note that Dr. Matlaw goes on to add even more probabilities for many, many more prophecies. In the interest of time and your attention span, we're going to leave off here. Note that Dr. Matlah's research found about 300 prophecies about the first advent, that is, of Jesus the Christ, and 1,800 prophecies about the second advent of the Bab and Baha'u'llah. So what does all this mean? The probability of being hit by lightning or winning the lottery are 1 in 10 to the 5th power and 1 in 2.6 times 10 to the 7th power, respectively, making them extremely unlikely of coming true for you or me. So the probability of these persons or events around these persons fulfilling all 44 of these Bible prophecies, the 26 we reviewed plus the 18 time prophecies, due to chance alone is 1 in 4 times 10 to the 66th power, which is inconceivably unlikely, even more incredible than the odds that Jesus fulfilled those 8 prophecies by chance alone. Remember, if we just count the 26 prophecies we reviewed here, the probability is 1 in 4 times 10 to the 41st power, still in the realm of fantastically unlikely to have all been fulfilled by chance alone. The probability that the 8 prophecies of the Messiah of the First Advent being fulfilled by chance was 1 in 2.8 times 10 to the 17th power. The probability that the 44 prophecies of the Messiah of the Second Advent being fulfilled by chance is 1 in 4 times 10 to the 66th power. So the probability that these 44 prophecies for the Second Advent being fulfilled by chance is almost 4 times more improbable than for the 8 prophecies of the First Advent. Even if you delete a couple of the Second Advent probabilities, it will still be way more than the probabilities for the First Advent. I don't mean this out of some warped sense of gamesmanship, a my Messiah is better than yours sort of thing. There's one God, and he has sent many manifestations of himself, and this new manifestation of God fulfills the promises of the past manifestations. What this should mean to the watcher of this video is that God has indeed fulfilled his promises and sent the long-promised Lord of hosts, the Messiah, the returned Christ, and the promised one to all the major faiths of God. There is only one God, and he sent Jesus and Baha'u'llah and Abraham and Moses and Buddha and Muhammad and Krishna and many, many others lost to unrecorded history. These probabilities that all these prophecies of the Bible having been fulfilled, especially in the time prophecy specifics that were also prophesied, proves the existence of some higher power creating these prophecies, communicating them to his prophets and small p prophets too, then setting things in motion to fulfill them, meaning he, she, or it is the greatest planner of them all. For simplicity's sake, let's just call it God. Remember, if you want to see the details of exactly how these 26 prophecies have been fulfilled, please go to a separate video. That's part 2 of this video series, and I'll show you how to get it through YouTube shortly. Just a couple more slides. Please investigate the Baha'i Faith for yourself. You can discover more information on your own and make up your own mind. A couple websites to consider are www.bahai.us. That's the official Baha'i website in the United States. The international official website is www.bahai.org. They've just redone these websites, and through the second one, the Bahai.org, you can access the reference library, which is free. It has the writings of the Bab, Baha'u'llah, Abdul Baha, and some, I believe, from Shoghi Effendi that are accessible for free through that www.bahai.org website. I do feel the need to tell you to be cautious a bit in your exploration over the internet anyway about the Baha'i Faith. There's lots of wonderful sites that have very good information on the Baha'i Faith, but unfortunately there's some bad stuff, erroneous stuff there too. Some people pass along misinformation, they just don't know any better. Others purposefully spread disinformation. They lie and they tell all kinds of strange, erroneous things about the faith for whatever reason they have. Be cautious. Get your sources from several different sources, and please don't leave Baha'is out of that. Talk to local Baha'is. If you go to the official website in your country, you can often ask people to contact you in your locality. You can ask them questions and they will give you the information for your consideration. But it's up to you to make up your own mind. We don't push people to become Baha'is. You're on your own, but please do your due diligence here. Now again, you can contact the official website in your country. For the United States, it's baha.us. In other countries, it would be most likely baha. And then a 2-letter abbreviation for your country. For instance, UK would be for the United Kingdom, CA would be for Canada, etc. And you can request more information through the national official websites. And I'll be sharing some information on the videos that I have that I've done, and also some books that you may find interesting. And here are the other videos on Bible prophecy fulfillment by the Baha'i Faith you may or may not be interested in. Christ has returned, Revelation revealed, Armageddon is over, most of it anyway, every eye will see him, and a couple more. The prophecy of the seventh millennium, the prophecies of Jesus, that's from the book of Matthew, chapter 24. That's a two-part video. And last, questions answered. Next slide, I'll tell you how to access them through YouTube. To access those videos, you go to YouTube, and in the search box enter my channel name, which is Integral Destiny 9, all one word. Don't forget the 9 at the end, and you'll see the videos, and you can select which one or ones that you want to watch. And here are some books by Baha'u'llah that you can get and read. Some may be in a local library. Some of them are accessible online for free through that website that you see at the bottom, www.baha'i.org. These books are by Abdu'l-Baha. Some may be accessible for free through that Baha'i.org website. Others may be available through Amazon.com or some other websites I'll show you shortly. These three books are by Hushadar Matla, I Shall Come Again, Lord of Lords, and King of Kings. The one with the pink arrows pointing to it, Lord of Lords, is the source for the information for this video on the calculation of Bible prophecy and mathematical probabilities. Information follows. Here are those three titles I mentioned by Dr. Matla, and they're the international book numbers for each of those. You can pause the video and write down those international book numbers if it might be helpful in you finding those books if you're interested. And this is a very good book about the fulfillment of the book of Matthew prophecies in chapter 24. The Prophecies of Jesus is the title, by Michael Sowers. I have seen it on Amazon.com, and I think it might be available through the BahaiBookstore.com as well. And here are two books by William Sears, Thief in the Night, The Case of the Missing Millennium, and The Half-Inch Prophecy. I like The Thief in the Night especially. It's a very good book, small, cheap, and it's kind of formatted like a mystery that has to be solved. And if you're interested in more information about general information about the Baha'i Faith, our history and beliefs, these two books are very good. Baha'u'llah in the New Era by J.E. Esselmont at the top, and The Baha'i Faith, The Emerging Global Religion. Here are some websites you can find the books, BahaiResources.com and BahaiBookstore.com. Now don't forget to go to part 2. Go to YouTube, enter into the search box Integral Destiny 9, and find Bible Prophecy and Mathematical Probabilities Part 2 of 2. This presentation is not an official presentation by the world community of the Baha'is or of the United States. It was conceived, written, and narrated by this singular Baha'i in an obviously amateur production. Thank you for watching, and good luck on your spiritual quest in life. If you have any questions, my email address is at the bottom.